On February 16, 2009, a 200-pound chimpanzee named Travis would brutally attack his owner's friend, Charla Nash, resulting in permanent disfigurement and blindness. This horrific incident would not just raise ethical questions about keeping wild animals as pets, but would also serve as a prime example of just how deadly chimpanzees can be. Travis the chimp was born on October 21, 1995, in the small town of Festus, Missouri. The chimp was taken away from his mother at just 3 years old before being purchased from a breeder by Jerome and Sandra Harold. The price tag? $50,000. The Harold family would go on to name their new pet after Sandra's favorite singer, James Travis. The Harolds' love for chimps started about 25 years before this time, in the 1970s, when Sandra and her husband had amassed a substantial fortune through their various automotive ventures in Stamford, Connecticut, and would furthermore be widely regarded as highly accomplished entrepreneurs. However, despite their financial success, the couple had a penchant for thrills and adventures, and would regularly traverse the country so that Sandra, and later her daughter Sue, could compete in semi-professional barrel racing events at various rodeos. And it was during one of these very ventures that Sandra would encounter two individuals who would go on to have a profound influence on her future. The first of these is when she'd met the young and free-spirited Charla Nash, who'd been making her way across the nation through a rodeo competition, from which point onwards the pair would be almost inseparable and become very good friends. However, it was during an extremely unique rodeo event that Sandra would have her second encounter, one where a charismatic chimpanzee, decked out in cowboy attire, would stun audiences by majestically galloping around the arena on horseback, an act that Sandra would become so entranced by that she'd manage to find a way backstage to meet the chimp and its owner after their performance. She would offer Travis some gummies, which he'd happily accept, and the chimp would go on to quickly warm up to her because of this kind gesture. Just a few days later, Sandra attends yet another show, during which the chimpanzee spots Sandra in the audience and without hesitation jumps off his horse and runs directly into her arms. And it was at this point that Sandra would become enamored by the prospect of keeping Travis as a pet. With Jerome having agreed to the adoption, Travis would thus become part of the family, from bottle feeding and burping to even tucking him into a crib in their own bedroom for naps. Travis would enjoy privileges equivalent to that of a human child from the very start of his new life. Because he was exclusively growing up amongst humans, Travis would go on to display exceptional social skills, exhibiting proficiency in tasks such as using keys, dressing himself, gardening, and even grooming horses. He was a regular presence at family meals at the tables and would even get his own wine glass. And he had a love for ice cream so immense that he would go on to memorize the schedules of ice cream trucks. And as if all these activities weren't human enough, Travis would eventually develop the ability to use various forms of technology, things like looking through his favorite photos on a computer, or even watching his favorite TV shows for entertainment. And in addition to this already incredible list of his capabilities, Travis also held a passion for baseball and was even capable of operating a car. The Harolds went to great lengths to adapt their abode to suit the needs of a young and fast-growing chimpanzee. They constructed a spacious, secure chamber in the rear of the house, which featured a set of sliding doors that led to an outdoor pen. And to ensure the safety of the household, they installed a sturdy, lockable metal door on the entrance of their bedroom, thereby creating a small suite of rooms, inclusive of the caged chamber, where Travis would get to roam around freely when left unsupervised. And when Sandy and Jerome were present, Travis would be granted unrestricted access to the entire space, where he would crawl on his knuckles from the living room couch to the kitchen, swinging from the tires and ropes in his room, right on to his bed. And although the Harolds placed a mattress on the floor of their bedroom, they would on most nights allow Travis to come sleep with them on their bed, adding to just how much like an actual human the family viewed him as. Travis would quickly become a beloved figure in the community due to his exceptional social skills and lovable demeanor. His fame would continue to grow as he would work on various commercials and television shows as an animal actor, including Coca-Cola ads and appearances on popular programs such as The Maury Povich Show and The Man Show, captivating the hearts of millions across the nation. Occasionally, Sandra's now closest friend, Charla, would drop by for a visit, accompanied by her daughter Brianna. They would often spend time at Sandra's sitting outside, and Charla would play with Travis while he would clamber all over her, fiddling with her long blonde hair, after which they would all take a picture together as a souvenir for that day's visit. What Sandra considered the happiest times of her life would unfortunately be short-lived when in September of 2000, her only daughter Sue would tragically pass away in a car accident. As a result of her daughter's untimely demise, Sandra would understandably grow even closer to Travis. As time went on, for the most part, Travis really did help Sandra with the grieving process, and although he was quickly growing, he would during this time pose no problems to her or anyone, at least for the next 3 years. Come 2003, however, the first sign of trouble would present itself, when an incident occurred that would cause Travis to react aggressively as Sandy was driving with him to the family tow shop. Someone happened to walk by and throw a bottle into the car, causing Travis to unbuckle his seatbelt, jump out, and lunge at a passerby. He would then roll around in the middle of the road and climb on cars and even chase police officers who'd been called to the scene. Despite repeated attempts to lure him back to the car, Travis would keep jumping out and causing chaos for several hours before finally tiring and climbing back into the car on his own. The police, who were familiar with Travis due to his popularity, would eventually write the incident off as playful behavior. 2 years after this incident, Sandy would be devastated to find out that her husband has been diagnosed with stomach cancer and would tragically pass away just days later. His death would once again lead Sandra into a deep depression and would cause her to lean on Travis for emotional support, just as she had when Sue passed. It's important to keep in mind that an adult chimpanzee has strength equivalent to that of 4 or more men. This is mainly because their muscles contain more fast twitch fibers compared to humans. And despite the fact that Travis was well socialized, it was also well known that he was still a chimp, and if he ever were to snap, then he would be a real force to be reckoned with, especially considering his raging hormones as he reached adulthood. These very real concerns would lead Sandra to being contacted by wildlife authorities about the potential danger of continuing to keep Travis as a pet. But of course, like a mother coming to the defense of her child, Sandra would convince them that Travis wasn't at all prone to violence, and that he was different than the other chimps, confident that she could handle him if things ever did go south. Not long after Jerome's death, Sandra would secure Charla a job at her towing company, and she would also give her the keys to the apartment that Jerome had built for Sue, rent-free, as not only were the pair like sisters at this point, but the recently widowed Sandra was clearly craving company. And so Sandra would finally get a much-needed fresh start, and life would begin looking up again. Charla would often visit Sandra and Travis, and would even babysit him sometimes, although she admittedly never quite felt 100% safe around the powerful chimp. It's February 16th of 2009, and the now 14-year-old Travis has naturally grown to become vastly different from the adorable baby chimp that everyone had once been accustomed to. Standing at 5 feet tall and weighing in at a staggering 240 pounds, Travis was now spending most of his days indulging in junk food and watching TV, much like a human couch potato would, except this was a chimp that was much more physically capable than of course a sedentary human being would be. Sandra returns home from work to notice that Travis is unusually disturbed and detached on this day. He wasn't showing any interest in watching TV, neither was he responding to activities that would typically excite him. Instead, he snatches a set of car keys and begins to frantically run around the cars in the yard, begging to be taken for a drive like a spoiled child. Concerned with his hyperactive behavior, Sandra proceeds to give Travis a Xanax tablet by slipping it into a cup of tea. Xanax is a short-acting tranquilizer usually prescribed for panic disorders and anxiety. It has been controversially used on wild animals, especially in captivity, for decades, and although the practice is often looked down upon by many, it still occurs in many parts of the world till this very day. With no changes in his behavior, a concerned Sandra would then call Charla and inform her of the situation. requesting that she come help her contain Travis. Charla would arrive at Sandra's property around 3:40 p.m., and just as she opens the iron gate and makes her way to the front of the house, she then sees Travis standing about 35 feet away from her. She then takes a red Elmo doll, which she had brought along with her, and holds it over her face playfully, which is precisely when, for an unknown reason, Travis would suddenly snap and fly into a fit of rage, proceeding to full-on charge at Charla, powerfully knocking her into her car and to the ground. He would then proceed to maul her relentlessly. Despite Sandra's desperate pleas for him to stop, the mauling was so brutal that Sandra literally thought Charla was being eaten alive in front of her very eyes. Travis then goes on to use his powerful canines to rip and eat Charla's whole face off, as well as multiple fingers, while simultaneously inflicting severe bites and lacerations to multiple parts of her torso. Fearing for her own life at this point, a helpless Sandra runs back into the house, grabs a kitchen knife, rushes back out, and begins to stab Travis around his back repeatedly. This action would cause Travis to briefly stop and look at Sandra for a moment in a state of shock and confusion, after which he would go on to continue the assault, regardless of his stab wounds. It's at this point that a horrified Sandra jumps into one of her cars, knife in hand, and makes the fateful 911 call heard across the nation. Once the police finally do arrive, an enraged Travis would charge at one of their vehicles, breaking the driver's side mirror, at which point the officer inside the car shoots him 4 times, causing him to run off, after which he would shortly after fall to the ground and finally perish. Despite her gruesome injuries and the myriad of major physical challenges that this horrific incident posed to her life, Charla's remarkable emotional and mental resilience have allowed her to not only persevere through a long and arduous road to recovery, but are qualities of her that stand as a beacon of strength for the millions who've heard and been inspired by her incredible story of survival.